Welcome to First Thursday, and I'm excited. This is a really great webinar. Thank you all for attending. And today we're going to talk about why choose the Bridge Trust. All of you here have lots of options. You are in a position where you can choose for your clients to learn how to and provide for them any type of trust that is in the world of options. That includes a fully offshore trust, that includes a fully domestic trust, and includes the bridge trust. What I'm going to talk about today is why would you want to choose the bridge trust over an offshore trust or a domestic asset protection trust. So who I am. My name is Douglas Lodmell. I am the co-founder and managing partner of Lodmell & Lodmell, and we've been doing asset protection only since 1997. And I am the creator of the Asset Protection Council, which is a nationwide network of attorneys and other professionals, CPAs, financial planners, dedicated to educating you about asset protection, how it works, and how you can use these tools to add asset protection to your offering for your clients. So let's talk about why you'd want to choose the Bridge Trust. Why is the Bridge Trust better than choosing either a domestic or a foreign asset protection trust for your clients? Well, let's go through it. Number one, strategic versus tactical. Well, first of all, let me explain strategy versus tactics. Strategy defines your overall plan and goal, and a good strategy creates multiple options. Tactics are the skills, maneuvers, and tools used to accomplish the goals defined by the strategy. So here's the difference. A good strategic asset protection plan is going to create a lot of options. It's going to create a lot of possibilities for our clients to be able to make moves at a future date that make sense for them, that are tactically relevant. An offshore trust is a tactical move. So a bridge trust creates the option of an offshore trust, but it does not create the obligation for an offshore trust. And if it's tactically advantageous for our clients to have a fully offshore trust, then the bridge trust makes it both legal and ethical to move the money after the fact into a fully offshore trust. And let me give you a couple examples, because people say, well, why wouldn't I just want an offshore trust from day one? Isn't that always better? No, that's like saying an F-16 is always better. No, sometimes a sniper rifle is better than an F-16. You have to pick the right tool. So if you have a case and you've exhausted all the domestic defenses, if everything has been exhausted and the case is still going on and the facts are not favorable to you, then triggering the trust and having a fully offshore trust may be a tactical advantage at that point. But what if the case is going well? What if the case is that everything is going in your favor and your domestic defenses are holding up just fine? Then triggering the trust may be a tactical disadvantage, because we may get to the point where you're going to have to disclose to a judge and or a jury all of the moving parts of your plan, and if one of those is offshore, that may create an optics problem. So it is very important that when you're setting up an asset protection plan for a client, that you are very strategic about it, that we create a plan that has and builds in options, and those options will be tactical, but that we don't run straight to the tactical. We don't automatically go, okay, well, let's just, do everything all at once, go straight offshore, and that's it. So strategic versus tactical. And the bridge trust is strategic, whereas the offshore trust is tactical. Okay, number two, optics. Now, optics, I just said the word. For everybody on the phone who's a lawyer, you really understand what this means. It means how the case looks and feels. So good optics means the case feels right. It's the arguments make sense. The actions of the parties were congruent with things that made sense. Effectively, it just passes the smell test. It's got good optics. If your case has good optics, you have a better negotiating position, and you're more likely to find yourself in favor with the court. Now, Bad optics are when your actions and the facts appear devious, or they appear fraudulent, or it looks like you were trying to distract or hinder or delay or defraud. In other words, there's red flags. The bad optics means that your facts don't pass the smell test. It just doesn't smell right. Bad optics diminish your leverage and your negotiating position, and you're much more likely to find an unsympathetic court. Optics are extremely important. So, for better or worse, offshore today conjures bad optics. And that's because of the Panama Papers, and that's because of offshore accounts. I mean, for the past 10 years, I would say that when you say offshore, there's been a very concerted effort to effectively paint it with the brush of, oh, something's wrong. Whether it's true or not doesn't really matter when what we're concerned about is optics. Well, when are we concerned about optics? We're concerned about optics when we're talking about the tactical versus the strategic. So before we've triggered the bridge trust, the client's trust is a domestic trust. It's invisible. It's not registered anywhere that anyone can find it. The client is not going to have to disclose that they have an offshore trust or that they have any offshore accounts, because they don't have any of those things. And they can disclose everything domestic. I can also think of several cases that I've had where civil issues have turned criminal. And believe me, the criminal lawyers do not want any kind of component with offshore involved, because that, in their words, pretty much guarantees that they're going to have an uphill battle on the criminal front. So very important, the optics, and the bridge trust gives you better optics. It's domestic. It doesn't even have a tax return. It's very simple. The client is the trustee. Frankly, from an optics standpoint, it looks, feels, and smells like a revocable living trust. And I have seen many times where that's what the parties all assumed it was. Whereas an offshore trust, you can't hide its optics. It's offshore. It files a 3520. It has a separate tax ID. There's no way to hide its optics. So I'm not saying that the offshore is automatically going to give you bad optics. What I'm saying is it's all about flexibility. And I want to be in a position where I'm making that choice as to what I am showing to the other side. And we all know this as attorneys and advising clients. We all understand that it's very important that we want to be in control of when things happen and where. So optics is my second reason why the bridge trust is much better than a fully offshore trust. Okay, reason number 3. Flexibility. This is really the key to the whole thing. I mean, everybody knows that a ballet dancer is extremely strong because they're flexible. Cars break because they get inflexible. The belts get dry and withered and they break. Human bodies break when they get inflexible. In fact, aging studies have shown that one of the keys to living long is retaining your flexibility. Things break when they're not flexible. Sometimes you need to have things turned into iron for a specific purpose. But when you're talking about an asset protection plan, you want it to be flexible. You want it to be very capable of changing and morphing into what you need it to be. And we just talked about that. If we need it to be a domestic trust because of the optics or because the strategy demands it, well, the bridge trust can be that, because that's what it is. If we decide that it needs to be an offshore trust because that's what's going to protect the assets, and we don't care about the optics, and that's the tactical advantage for our clients, the bridge trust can be that too. You lose that if you go straight to one of the iron solutions, and the offshore trust really is. It's a very firm solution. When it's appropriate, it works incredibly well. I mean, I'm clearly want to make that point, but it's not always appropriate, and it's very important to maintain the flexibility and the options available. So flexibility is reason number 3 why the bridge trust is really a better tool than a straight foreign asset protection trust. Okay, reason number 4, control. This one is pretty straightforward, right? We have clients that all want to be in complete control of everything. That's what clients are. They're control freaks. And as we all are. And if you ask me, do I want to be in control of my trust? The answer is yes, I want to be in control of my trust. The bridge trust allows the client to have direct control of the trust as the trustee. This is unique in the asset protection world. I cannot think of another asset protection trust that can allow this. The reason is because of its flexibility. Because we have the option to create something later in it in which the client is not the trustee, in which the jurisdiction is foreign, we can use the client as the initial trustee. This gives the client this very, very important thing that they want. And I can tell you, this is a very clear reason why this is a much better tool than a foreign asset protection trust. But this is also the very reason why it's a much better tool than a domestic asset protection trust. So a domestic asset protection trust is a trust that doesn't have the option to become foreign, and so it is going to have to stand up under the rules of one of the domestic asset protection trust states. And in order to do that, it needs to be drafted extremely strictly. And part of that will be absolutely not letting the client have anywhere near control. So this element is really a huge issue for clients. If you were going to propose or attempt to use a domestic asset protection trust, you need to be prepared to tell your client you cannot have any control, because if you do, it's extremely unlikely that that DAPT is going to be effective. I personally have questions whether any DAPT is going to be effective, and under the certain circumstances, and the answer is we can't tell. But again, that's why I am such a fan of the bridge trust. It allows the clients to be in control when it's not under attack initially, when you're engaging the client, when the client has to make the decision, and then later, at a later time, we can make the decision whether it's time to remove that client from control. So number 4, control is a big reason why the bridge trust is a much better tool than either a domestic or a foreign asset protection trust. Okay, number 5, costs. I don't care how wealthy your clients are, they all look at costs. I have a neighbor, and he has probably about $12 million worth of aviation toys. A couple of jets, a couple of helicopters. I mean, this guy is really, absolutely got a ton of stuff. And yet, there's times when those type of clients will eat at a fast food restaurant instead of going out to a nice restaurant because they didn't want to pay the bill. Everybody is concerned of costs, everybody. And you really have to be aware of this when you're proposing either a domestic or a foreign plan to a client. The bridge trust focuses on costs because we understand that if we don't have something that the client can maintain, it's not going to be around once the client needs to use it, and that means it's not going to do any good. So the biggest cost is not the initial acquisition cost. Frankly, that's not the biggest cost. Clients look at that, they either decide they want to pay it or they don't want to pay it, and then they make the decision and it's over. The more important cost is the ongoing maintenance cost. That's what I really focus on. And when you go to an offshore trust, it's very difficult for that cost to be less than $5,000. It's more often between $5,000 and $10,000 a year. And when we get to the next reason, which is going to be compliance, you're going to see why that is. With a domestic asset protection trust, you have less compliance, but you still have ongoing costs. Combined with the control, I would say the ongoing cost for domestic is probably half of the foreign. It's probably around $2,500 a year, but less, but still have to put it in the mix. So number 5, cost. The bridge trust is designed to have a simple maintenance structure. It's $2,100 a year. It doesn't go up once the client is in the door. They're grandfathered in. That rate stays the same. They can predict it. Everybody can predict it. And I've never had a client complain about it. I'm not saying that they don't want to negotiate it or question it, but once they accept it, that's it. They don't keep coming back to it, and that's important. Okay, reason number 6, compliance. And I just mentioned this. With an offshore asset protection trust, you have to file Forms 3520, 3520A each year. This is not a small thing. This is a full disclosure of everything in the trust. It's a full balance sheet disclosure. It tells the highest balance of the account each year. If you do have offshore accounts, which makes sense to have, if you have a foreign trust, you should have foreign accounts because that's how it works. Then you have FACTA disclosures. FACTA disclosures, again, it's full, who the underlying beneficial owner of the account and of the trust is. You basically are setting things in stone. You're really creating a record with the IRS, and there's cost to this. Compliance on this piece alone could be several $1,000s a year just to complete the compliance issues, and then you have to do it every year. I can tell you that the average life of a fully foreign offshore trust is 4 years, and this came from the head legal counsel at a trust company that is got a lot of clients. And the reason is that people usually create fully offshore trust when they are feeling under pressure, and after the pressure has gone away, which usually takes a couple of 3 years, they look at the cost and the compliance and the fact that they don't have control, and they say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to roll it back. And so we end up, bringing it back. And with the bridge trust, it's designed to do that. That's exactly what it's designed to do. It's designed to be domestic. It can move to become foreign, and then it can move back to become domestic again. It's a bridge, and that bridge stays available to the client to move back and forth on. With an offshore trust, that's not the case. Offshore trusts are designed to be offshore. And so when you dismantle an offshore trust, you change the very nature of it. So again, it's back to that same issue, which is flexibility. It's really all about flexibility. And with the bridge trust, we basically have no compliance whatsoever. It's a domestic grantor trust with the clients as the trustees. There's no tax return. There's not even a tax ID for the trust. It's treated just like a revocable living trust. And we give each client a tax opinion letter from our office explaining chapter and verse exactly why that is allowable and how that's done. And it's just very easy. If and when we have to cross the bridge and become a fully foreign trust, then it will have the 3520. Then when we open up offshore accounts, then it will have the FACTA disclosures. But for most of my clients, and when I say most, I mean 98% of them, we are not going to have to actually trigger the trust. Having the planning in place is enough to create a level of deterrence for them to negotiate a settlement that is in their favor. And again, this is what we want. We want to give ourselves tools. We want to give the client tools and options. We want to give them moves that they can make. We don't want to commit them in a certain direction automatically. And that's my biggest gripe with a fully foreign asset protection trust from day one, is you've fully committed yourself. That's it. It's fully foreign, 3520s, offshore accounts. You need to go ahead and go all the way, otherwise there's no point in it. And once you do that, that's a tactical move. And that may be tactically the right thing to do 10 years from now. We don't know. But it may be strategically the wrong thing to do 10 years from now. It may be the exact wrong thing. And that's why the bridge trust, in my opinion, is just a better tool. It's not that it's stronger if under attack than an offshore trust. No, the offshore trust is stronger. It's that it can become an offshore trust under attack, but it doesn't have to be an offshore trust. And that's a big deal. Which brings us to number 7, and the final reason, continuity. This is maybe the most important reason. And what I mean by continuity is that it is that the planning stays in place. We don't break the chain. It is in place. It gets put in place in just 2016. It stays in place so that in 2024, when something comes up for the client, it's still there. That's continuity. I just said that the average lifespan of a fully foreign asset protection trust is only 4 years. That means in year 5 when the client calls back, or in year 15 when the client says, hey, I need to use this now for this reason I had no idea was going to exist, it's no longer there because they dismantled it. This is so important. I see this all the time. I get calls from people that are, somewhat on the verge of a problem, and they have been told by other planners or from their own research on the internet that the best thing out there is an offshore trust. That's the best, and they just want to go straight to that. and I have to actually explain to them that it's not the best. It's the best tool for a certain circumstance, just like an F-16 is the best tool for a certain set of facts. But a sniper rifle is the best tool for a different set of facts. What we need is flexibility, and having your trust in place in the future when it comes time to actually use it is maybe the most important reason, and that is continuity. Okay, that's it. Those are my reasons why the bridge trust is better than an asset protection trust done in a foreign jurisdiction or in a domestic jurisdiction. So please ask questions. I would love, we had a lot of questions the last time, and the way you ask a question is in the box there. You just type in your question and I'll be able to read it. And okay, I've got one coming up right now, and everybody please just keep typing in your questions, and I'll just go through them as they come up. So question number one, is there ever a time to go straight to an offshore trust? Okay, you know what, thank you for asking that question. Of course, there is. There are times when the client comes to us and strategically it's already the right time to make the tactical move of going to an offshore asset protection trust, because everything has already gone to the point where it's very clear that that is the tactically correct move. And so in those cases, we will just start with an offshore asset protection trust. Those cases would be things where we have a client of extremely high risk, where the type of risk is something that comes on very fast. The clients could be, you know, subject to regulatory bodies that are kind of notorious for coming in quickly and you know, shooting first and asking questions later, or you know, issues where it's just very clear that offshore is going to be the best because we are likely going to have to defend this. Those are times when we want to go offshore first. I can tell you it's less than 5% of the clients that walk in my door. Most of my clients come in, it's not strategically appropriate for them to go straight offshore. And I tell you, sometimes they want to go straight offshore. They actually want to because they've done their research and they've either been scared off by some misinformation out there about, oh, you know, you're not going to have time to do it, which, by the way, this is really important. I've seen it said that you will not have time to trigger your trust and to move your money. Well, first of all, in 20 years, I've never not had time, and we've had to do this over 100 times, trigger on several thousand trusts. So we've never not had time. Why do I always have time? Well, because lawsuits are very slow. I mean, you have miles of runway. You can see things coming far in advance, and it's very, very, you would really have to be super slow on the trigger to miss the opportunity to trigger your trust well before you have a problem. And this includes if you get sued out of the blue. So let's say you get sued out of the blue, and all of a sudden you're sued. That still gives you miles of runway. I mean, you're going to answer the complaint. You're going to go into discovery. You have probably 2 or 3 years before that becomes an issue. So I've seen offshore providers or people that really are only fans of offshore or only do offshore focus on, oh yeah, you'll never have time to do it. It's just not true. We've always had time to do it, and I can't think of too many scenarios where we wouldn't. And if I can, or if one comes across me, well, that's the time when we do go offshore from day one. That would be a case where that's exactly what we want to do. Okay, great question. Thank you. All right, next question is, have you ever had a client lose control of trust assets before the trust could be triggered? Okay. Oh, well, thank you. I was answering that question right as you were asking the question, I guess. Sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah, the answer is never. I've never had a client lose control of the trust assets before we could trigger it. Again, I just can't think of a scenario where that is happening. It's more of a boogeyman. Clients do call and say, oh, I heard, you know, my account could be frozen before we even have a discovery. I mean, I can't think of too many cases where that's the case. You'd have to have extreme facts for that to be the case. And even if it was, which account would they be freezing? They'd be freezing the personal account of the person being sued. A properly drafted asset protection plan is going to be, the bridge trust connected to the asset management limited partnership. The account with the money in it is going to be the asset management limited partnership. Very unlikely that that account is going to be on anybody's radar to freeze before we've even had the judge hear anything. Again, it's a boogeyman type of situation. I've never seen it happen. If there's really a concern that could happen because of some very specific facts, well, that would be a case where we would want to probably go offshore from day one. Okay. Next question is, does waiting to trigger the trust create a fraudulent conveyance? You know what? Thank you for asking this question, because this is really something that comes up a lot. And as attorneys, we are often having to consider and answer questions to our clients about fraudulent conveyance. Well, first of all, let's talk about what fraudulent conveyance is. Fraudulent conveyance is a conveyance with an intent to delay, hinder, or defraud a creditor. So what it takes is a conveyance, which is a transfer of ownership, not a transfer of location, a transfer of ownership, and it takes a creditor. So the courts in general are pretty strict on the way they interpret this. You have to have both the transfer and the creditor in order for there to be a fraudulent transfer or a conveyance. And when we set up an asset protection plan, when does the conveyance occur? The conveyance occurs when we fund the plan. That's the conveyance. If we later trigger the trust, we're not conveying assets. Those assets are already owned by the bridge trust. We are simply moving jurisdictions. So we are going from investing in the U.S. to investing offshore. It's really that simple, but it's not a conveyance after the fact. So waiting to trigger your bridge trust does not create a fraudulent conveyance, because the conveyance occurs when we create the bridge trust. Now, if the client has a problem at the time that we create the bridge trust, that is when the conveyance is important. And we do have ways to handle that. We can either exclude the specific issue at hand when we're setting up the trust, or we can provide for clawbacks later so that the assets could be clawed back from the trust if, in fact, that particular issue creates a problem. But I can tell you, most of the time, clients are actually the issue that is causing them the stress is not the issue that they end up using the trust for. It's usually just the issue that makes them realize that I would like to have some asset protection. I feel very vulnerable now. And even if I tell a client, hey, I can't tell you that the trust is going to work for this case because you've already been sued, but I'm advising that you set up the trust, that we fund the trust, that we exclude this particular lawsuit so that we don't have any conveyance issues or fraudulent conveyance issues, and that this will protect for all future claims. 9 times out of 10, the clients say, that's great. I'm happy with that. I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to protect from this, but this woke me up to realizing that I don't want to be left hanging out if this ever happened again. So do not turn away clients that have problems. Don't turn them away. We just have to work around their problems. You still want to call. You still want to make that a call that we do together. Okay, let me the next one. Okay, does it become more challenging when the bridge trust owns various partnership interests, S corp interests, and I could even add to this question LLC interests, etc.? Great question. The answer is yeah, it does make it more challenging. The easiest thing to protect is cash, because cash can be physically moved to an offshore bank account inside the name of the trust. And so when we do that, it's very, 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 very difficult for anybody, a court or anybody, to reach those assets. If what the trust also holds is other corporations or LLCs which hold real estate, it does become more challenging, because now we have physical assets that are still here in the United States, but that are owned by the trust. So here's what the bridge trust does, is it gives us options. That's what it's designed to do. So in a complete nuclear situation where the client is like, this has gone nuclear, I do not expect a good result, I absolutely feel at this moment that I need to completely go for the most aggressive form of protection, then what we suggest is that they begin liquidating their assets, either liquidating or leveraging their assets. So if they have a real estate portfolio of $2 million that's in the trust via the limited liability companies held by the limited partnership, we would suggest that they begin selling that. And they get rid of it and turn it into cash so that we can physically move it. Or they leverage it. If they don't want to sell it, they leverage it. And while traditional banking options may close down for a client in a lawsuit, they may not. It depends on the client, but they may. There's always private lenders out there, always. Interest rates are higher, terms are stricter, but there's always money to be had for good collateral. So again, we can't predict the future. We're not providing the client with a panacea, an absolute solution to every problem that they could ever have in the future. What we're giving them is the best toolkit that we can in order for them to get the best result at the end of the day. What I will tell you is that from the last 20 years of experience, I've had very few cases that really have gone to the nuclear level. And you'd be surprised how effective the domestic in combination with the bridge trust is in dissuading challengers. Most plaintiffs and plaintiffs' attorneys are really analyzing the cases very carefully before they get too involved, and especially if they're taking it on a contingent fee. And they really think twice before they're just going to go out towards a plan that has LLCs holding real estate, limited partnership with multiple members holding cash as well as holding interest in LLCs, and then an asset protection trust on top of it. Believe me, that does affect their decision. That does make them negotiate differently. And the vast majority of the times, we're able to help the client effectively present the plan in such a way that the litigation counsel that's representing our clients can negotiate effectively and get a result to get this thing finished and off the table. Clients, for the most part, don't want to just tell the other side to go pound sand. I mean, that might be their first reaction, but that's not what they really want. What they really want is it to be done. And sometimes they're willing to pay for that. In fact, most of the time they're willing to pay. They just don't want to be completely extorted from. If there's a reasonable case or if there's a legitimate issue at hand, most clients, after a few months dealing with it, and certainly after a year or more, they want to get rid of it. What having this planning in place does is it gives them a much bigger chance that they're going to get rid of it for terms that are their terms, not the other side's terms. So that's why I think the bridge trust is the best tool available when it comes to using an asset protection trust because of its flexibility. We haven't committed ourselves offshore. We haven't given up or ceded control from our clients to an offshore trustee. We haven't even committed ourselves to a domestic trust jurisdiction and a domestic trustee. We've left it open to make that decision later. And so it's just that flexibility. I cannot overstate how important it is. Flexibility is the key to strength, not rigidity. Rigid things break. Flexible things bend. I live in South Florida, and let me tell you, we do not have redwood oaks that are super rigid and standing up straight. We have Category 5 hurricanes with 160-mile-an-hour winds, and believe me, what stands up is the palm trees that just bend in the wind. It's amazing to watch them. They will literally bend over and touch the ground with their fronds, but they will stand back up when it's over, and they survive because of their flexibility. The bridge trust is the most flexible structure that I have ever come across. If there was a better one, I would use it. And for me, that is the reason why you, with all the options you have available to you to recommend for your clients, I think choosing the bridge trust is your best option. So I would invite you to join the Asset Protection Council if you're not yet a member. You can go to assetprotectioncouncil.com. You can download our information package and their application. For those of you who are already members but haven't really fully completed everything or don't have your member directory page up, I suggest that you do it. Call Kitty or email kitty@lodmel.com, KITTY@lodmel.com, and she will help you. She just needs your picture, your bio, your firm's website address. We will also help you get your asset protection page on your website up and running. Brian, the chief marketing officer in my office, will help you to get your web page up. We'll help you to use the key concepts of asset protection. There's a lot of resources on the Asset Protection Council for you to build your business. And so I really hope that this session today on why the Bridge Trust is the best asset protection trust tool available was helpful to you. If you have more questions that come up later, you're welcome to email me directly, doug@lodmel.com, or call me. And I would encourage you to pick a client, call them, propose that we have a joint conference call with that client to discuss asset protection. I will make you look great. We will have an analysis with the client. I'll do all the heavy lifting. I'll do all the work. I'll explain it to the client. I'll make a very clear recommendation to them, and then I will leave it to you, and I will help you to communicate and efficiently learn how to use this structure. So if you can think of a client, that's the best way to begin. You know, to begin it, you got to begin it. And the best way to begin is to just pick somebody. I had one affiliate say, I have somebody, it's actually my girlfriend, would you mind doing it? And I said, absolutely not, be happy to do it. She was an actual candidate, but she was also his girlfriend, and he wanted a low threat way in which he could see how the process went. If you want to do it with your spouse, with yourself, with someone in your office, or just imaginarily, I'm happy to do it. I want to get you the tools that you need so that you feel comfortable presenting this to your clients, and I'm there to do it with you the whole way. When we do these joint analyses, it's with me and with you and with the client. And again, we've been doing this a long time. I understand it very well. So the clients are always very happy and appreciative of it. And you would be surprised. You might have some hesitation proposing this to clients. Believe me, they want it. They're looking for it. They're Googling it. They're asking for it. And you're going to find that they're going to go, oh, you know what? Funny. I was just thinking about this. I'm so glad you brought it up. Do not assume that somehow you're asking them to do something that they don't want to do. Be bold. Ask your clients. You can also send out a letter or an email to your clients, and Brian can help you design that and get that done. And again, we have lots of tools to help you build your practice around asset protection while using the Bridge Trust. So that is all the questions I had come in. I really appreciate everyone's attention today, and we will see you next month. Have a great holiday season, and remember, it's your money. Act like it.